What's going on? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show on DRFTV. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. This is the preview edition, taking a look at 4 races from the upcoming weekend, Saturday, July the 20th. 2 from Monmouth, 1 from Del Mar, 1 from Saratoga. The reason? I think these 4 races could potentially be very important going forward. They may not be the most competitive on paper, but I think horses running in those 4 races could all figure in a major way. Whether it's year-end awards, whether it's Breeders' Cup races, whatever the case may be, these 4 races I think are going to be very, very interesting to look back on 2, 3, 4, 5 months from now and see, you know what, maybe this was a giant weekend that sort of helped mold and shape these 4 divisions, the 3-year-old males, 3-year-old females, older males, and older females. Or maybe we'll look back in time and say, terrible opinion, terrible idea, terrible topic. But nonetheless, here we are. We're going to give it a look, see what we got. We'll take a look using Formulator, take a look at some replays as well. However you listen to this thing, thank you for doing so. YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. Please rate, review, and subscribe. If you're over on YouTube, make sure the bell icon's lit up so you get everything that DRFTV has to offer. Questions, comments, or concerns beneath that video player on YouTube or directly to me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Again, I kind of just laid out the 4 divisions, and we'll kick off with one of the races from Monmouth Park. By most people's estimation, it is the highlight of the weekend. The Great One Haskell Invitational for 3-year-old males. Short field, select field. Got some pretty good runners in there. Let's take a look. First division that we'll talk about is the 3-year-old males, and clearly the main event is the Grade 1 Haskell at Monmouth on Saturday, race number 12. Post time 5:49. It's going to be a hot one down there. It's a hot one basically everywhere on the East Coast. Crazy, crazy temperatures and heat indexes and you name it. So I don't know what that means for some of these horses. Maybe some of them handle heat better than others do. Sounds like Monmouth is doing their due diligence, putting every possible sort of protocol in place to make sure fans, horses, athletes, everyone involved, everybody's taken care of and looked after. So that's good, positive. Hopefully everything goes off without any sort of issue. This race itself, though, it may not be a big field, but I mean, it's hard to ignore or argue the idea that this is a very critical race as far as the 3-year-old males are concerned for a number of reasons. We'll start with the obvious one with maximum security. By the way, this is the sort of new version of Formulator. I go back and forth between using the legacy version and this version, which you can find right on drf.com. This is slowly working its way into the legacy version where there will soon enough be the trainer stats and things like that. But right now, they're still working things out. But it's very slick. Things seem to load considerably quicker. So if you're a Formulator user, I would encourage you to at least take a look at this because once it's finalized, I think it's going to be pretty slick. We'll begin with maximum security, the obvious horse. He's the morning line favorite, 8-5. I think that's fair. He might be even a little bit shorter than that. But, you know, he's a horse that right now, regardless of this race right here, this Kentucky Derby, I'm not going to get back into that whole argument. But regardless of where you stand on that, the fact of the matter is right now, the only real credential he has as far as year-end awards are concerned is the Grade 1 Florida Derby. To me, that puts him behind the first 3 horses, or not the first 3 horses, the 3 horses that have won classics. Puts him behind Country House, puts him behind War of Will, puts him behind Sir Winston. A win here will put him back on track. I still think he would need to do more to wrestle away divisional honors, but a win here would put him back on track. Now, you'll note that he has not run a bad race really in his entire career through 6 lifetime starts. The speed figures are there. The running style is there. This is a race that could feature a little bit of a hot pace. But the reason that this is as important as it is not just to get back on track, but you got to beat a horse that beat you on the square most recently in King for a Day. Now, we'll go up to King for a Day, break him from the inside for Pletcher and Velasquez, and we'll actually pull up the replay of the Pegasus. This was, I thought, a promising effort from King for a Day. I thought it was a promising effort from Maximum Security. We're going to blow this up a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. And fast forward here into the middle portion, going into the far turn of the race, you see that they're really going at it, and you see Maximum Security down here on the inside. He's being pushed along. Keep in mind, though, this is his first race since the Kentucky Derby, and on the outside, King for a Day, who had recency on him. I think the thing that people maybe initially were a little bit surprised, wow, you know, he lost. King for a Day has always been cut out to be a good horse. I mean, we talked about it a number of times. His run in the Kentucky Jockey Club last year as a 2-year-old, I think that was as good as any 2-year-old race we saw. He was wider than wide throughout over a sloppy sealed track, and he still was in with a puncher's chance. And here it feels like he just continues to improve. Now, why am I saying this is a positive race for both of these horses, or encouraging anyway? Because I think it is pretty clear that King for a Day has proven that he is of this caliber, that he is on par with some of the best 3-year-olds. The reason I think it was a good effort for Maximum Security, again, for the reason I laid out, that was his first start since the Derby, and you would presume that the Pegasus was not the goal. Keep in mind, Jason Service going into it said they did a little bit of blood work. They wanted to make sure that everything was okay with the horse. Everything seemed to be all right, so they went on with it. Realistically, he was probably not near 100% or cranked up anyway for the Pegasus. The goal would have been the Haskell, and I think you're going to get the best version of Maximum Security that we've seen yet on Saturday afternoon. I think you can make the argument you get the best version of King for a Day. Could it easily be a rematch of that race and just those two? Certainly. But it was nice when we got a little bit of an ad with this horse, Mucho Gusto, coming in for Bob Baffert. Now, we know Baffert's record down on the Jersey Shore in this race. We don't need to belabor that point. But the interesting thing with Mucho Gusto, for me, for the longest time, I was not totally convinced that added ground was going to be to his benefit. Made me think that perhaps he was going to be a horse that would be at his best going shorter. He ran really well in the Las Barrera. They bring him back at 2 turns at a mile and a 16th in the Affirmed. This was a very, very strong effort, in my opinion. I think he beat a good horse in here, his uncoupled stablemate in Roadster. We're going to fast forward this thing into the middle of the run. You're going to note going into the far turn, Roadster is well behind, and yes, at Santa Anita, that's not a running style that's conducive to success, especially with these fractions. See 24, 48, and 4. But look at the way that Mucho Gusto just ranges up on the outside very comfortably beneath Joe Talamo. He's not being asked a ton. He's doing this more or less on his own. Meanwhile, you see Roadster, now he has closed that gap considerably. I really don't think I can use the idea or the fact that, you know what, Mucho Gusto, yes, he did get the jump on him, but at this point, I figured Roadster was going to come up here and make a race out of it. Instead, Mucho Gusto, when he is set down by Talamo, he just flicks him away and goes on with it. This effort makes me think that 2 turns is not a problem for him, and a mile and an 8, the way that he finishes and he gallops out quite well after, I don't think this is... Put it this way. A mile and an 8, maybe it won't be his ideal distance, but a mile and an 8 at Monmouth Park, I think, is going to be really advantageous to this horse. I think it's going to be, if he's going to get it, it's going to be in this scenario. I think he's got a big chance in here. From a speed figure standpoint, he is a little bit light compared to the other two. There's no question about it. He's never eclipsed a triple-digit buyer. And from a Timeform US standpoint, he is on a little bit on the light side. Not a lot. A little on the light side. I think he's another one, though. Baffert wouldn't send him here unless he thought he had a big chance. I like the running style where he doesn't have to go to the lead. He can sit just off of it. I think Mucho Gusto is a very, very live chance in here. You want the full expanded stakes preview for this race with my pick, with Illman's pick, you got to go over to the Races of the Day page on DRF.com and take a look at all that. And I don't mean to give the others short shrift, the Bethlehem Roads, the Jovias, the Spun to Runs. Jovia wouldn't be a stunner if he won. The other horses I think would be a surprise. It feels like, though, this is a race where there are 3 horses. If Mucho Gusto wins, it just continues the trend that the 3-year-olds can't figure themselves out. If King for a Day wins, this will be back-to-back wins over Maximum Security, and he'll more likely than not stamp himself as a major threat for these 3-year-old races going forward and for divisional honors. And if Maximum Security wins, he will not only right the ship, but again put himself basically in a position of saying, now I have the Grade One Haskell, I have the Grade One Florida Derby, I was best in the Kentucky Derby. I should be king of this division. We'll find out. It's going to be a fascinating race. Not a big field, but an interesting race, and the ramifications going forward I think are very important. Now we'll move from this division, where this race looks a little bit more competitive, to a race in a division that if this filly keeps doing what it looks like she's capable of doing, it might be all said and done. Let's go up to Saratoga for the CCA Oaks. Nearly as much to say about the 3-year-old filly that I want to discuss. Race number 3 at Saratoga. When was the last time a Grade 1 was race number 3 up at the Spa? Mile and 8, the Coaching Club, American Oaks. All eyes on the number 1. 2 to 5 on the morning line, Gorana for Chad Brown. She is a perfect 2 from 2. She took on winners for the first time in her second lifetime start. Happened to be a Grade 1, the Grade 1 Acorn. All she did, go out there, blitz the field, win by 6. She is really looking like she could potentially be a special kind of filly, and I hate to throw the sort of special term out there, but holy smokes, she really hasn't done anything wrong and she's looked tremendous basically in all of her starts. Now, keep in mind, she is down on the inside on a day at Belmont Park where you want her to be inside. She's eventually going to split horses, and okay, fine. So she's a path or two off the rail. But for the most part, she was riding the best part. You see Serengeti Empress, winner of the Kentucky Oaks. She was out there cutting out those fast fractions, 43 and 4. But Guarana basically just inhales her at this point. Keep in mind, Jose Ortiz had a choice. He rode Serengeti Empress to win the Kentucky Oaks. And knowing that these two fillies are going to match up in the Acorn, Serengeti Empress and a horse that had one run under her belt, he chose the horse that had one run under her belt. Kind of figure out why now. She goes off. She looks like she could be anything. The way that she gallops out in this race is spectacular. And it makes me think, based on the pedigree and the way that she moves, I don't think added ground is going to be any sort of an issue for her. She just seems like she checks all the boxes. Now, the other piece that you might want to factor in, keep in mind, she's going to need to be going 2 turns for the first time in her career. So at a short price, I don't think, she's not one that I'm recommending you bet. I think she's going to win the race. But this is more, to me anyway, an instance where you sit back and see what you get. If she goes out there and wins the way that she won the Acorn, not only are you thinking that 3-year-old filly honors are ripe for the picking, but you're probably thinking you might have a little bit of an eye on year-end Breeders' Cup, where, you know, a race like the Distaff, you have big horses. You got big fillies and mares. But if this filly goes out and does something similar to what she did in the Acorn in the CCA Oaks, you can't help but let your mind start to get a little bit excited and start racing a little bit and saying, holy smokes, man, you might be looking at a monster here. And that's not to say that any other horses aren't capable, or any of the older girls don't still deserve to be bosses of their division. They certainly are. But Guarana is the kind of horse that feels like maybe she was just a little bit of a later bloomer. But now if she's capable of doing something similar to what she's done in her first 2 starts on Saturday afternoon, again, albeit against the short field. Champagne Anyone, nice filly, graded stakes winner. Boxwood, nice filly. Don't know if the dirt is really going to be her best surface, but who knows. Off topic, just think she's a little bit on the slow side. And Point of Honor, I like. I think she's a very nice horse. And at the distance, maybe she's the one that you want to take as an upset possibility. Boy, but just what I've seen visually from Guarana, I don't have any interest in trying to beat her. To me, this is one where we sit back, we wait and see. If she goes out and struts her stuff again, you can't help but start thinking, holy smokes, we might have something here. And if she wins in, let's say, workmanlike fashion, you say, you know what? You got another grade 1 under your belt. Maybe 3-year-old filly is going to be yours, but maybe taking on elders and defeating the elders, maybe that's a little bit too much too soon. Long way to go. Still got to get through Saturday first. It's hard not to get excited about a horse like Guarana, given the connections, given what she's done in 2 lifetime starts, given the pedigree. She checks most of the boxes. I'm going to be fascinated to see what we get from her Saturday afternoon up at the spot. Now, older horses. Let's go out to the West Coast. Take a look at the older males, because there's another horse that's very similar to Guarana. As far as when he wins in brilliant fashion. Let's talk about Catalina Cruiser. Race 4 at Del Mar Saturday, the Grade 2 San Diego, the local prep for the Grade 1 Pacific Classic. But interestingly enough, the horse that will take the lion's share of the money, and I think is just going to be too much for them, Catalina Cruiser, drawn down on the inside. According to Brad Free's closer look, the next stop might not be the Peak Classic. It might end up being the Grade 1 Forgo out at Saratoga on closing weekend. I'm sure most of that would have to do with his stablemate, Giftbox, and potentially Giftbox running in a race like the Pacific Classic for John Sadler and Ronis Racing. I had said when speaking about Guarana, the similarities between her and Catalina Cruiser, that when Catalina Cruiser wins, he wins brilliantly. And I can understand folks that might look at this True North just at face value and say, well, winning by a half length is not a brilliant effort. I would beg to differ in a major way. The reason this was run on the Friday of Belmont Stakes weekend. Now, the inside is where you wanted to be on Belmont Stakes Day. There's really no denying that. You wanted to be inside on Friday as well. Ooh, Larry, sorry, got to mute you. But not only do you want to be inside on Friday, I thought you needed to be forwardly placed, if not outright on the lead. You see Catalina Cruiser at the break. He is toward the back of the package. Joel Rosario gets him going a little bit. Gets him mid-pack here as they're going down the backside and into the far turn. We're going to fast forward here a little bit. Rounding the far turn, you see him about 2-3 paths between horses. And with the way that the track had been playing on Friday, it was going to be damn near impossible for a horse like Catalina Cruiser to win this race. And yes, he needs to work, but keep in mind this is his first race since the Breeders' Cup, which was essentially a non-effort because he just never picked his feet up. And for him to overcome the biases, inside and speed, to go and run down those two horses who are both nice horses, Strike Power and Recruiting Ready. To me, this was one of the most impressive performances of the entire weekend, including Belmont Stakes Day. This was a very promising effort. Now keep in mind, this is at 6.5 furlongs. I suppose it is still an unknown how far or what his best distance is, because he's really only gone 2 turns once in his life. And it was in last year's San Diego, a field of 5. But I hate to say this, it's going to be seemingly a very similar situation to what we have on Saturday. Not a big field, probably going to be forwardly placed, if not outright on the lead, and he's just better than those horses. I was reluctant to go all in back with this horse, and those of you that have followed throughout the years know that last year I was as big a fan of this horse as there was. Going into the Breeders' Cup, my only concern was he had won all of his races so easily and so convincingly. He had never really had a serious challenger, a serious horse that could kind of check him. What was going to happen when he got hit in the face, when he got punched in the nose? Would he be able to go on and fight on? Well, he got punched in the nose in the Breeders' Cup, and he completely folded. Now, with him being gone as long as he was, you have to wonder 2 things. Did something go wrong in the Breeders' Cup, or did they just want to kind of get his head right before they brought him back to the races? Well, whatever the situation may have been, the Connections did right by the horse. They put him away for a while. They bring him back in the True North, and not only did he run his eyeballs out coming off the bench, but to me, he showed some guts. He showed some grit to be able to overcome those sort of situations, those things that were going against him, and be able to go and get the job done. I expect him to win on Saturday. I expect him to be an incredibly short price. The reason I want to discuss him here and potentially going forward, the older males, they feel a little bit, like, sure, you have some quality up there. You have the McKinseys, you have the Seeking the Souls, you have the, if you want to put a horse like Thunder Snow in there, you want to put Catholic Boy and Preservationist, you got quality horses. But no one has strung together a campaign that is so dominant that at this point there's not a new fresh face that can come and eclipse that for year-end awards or for Breeders' Cup time. I feel like Catalina Cruiser, and I've had him ranked high on my Breeders' Cup Classic top 10 list since we started voting, because I think he is sort of the X factor in the group, where from a talent standpoint, I have little doubt that he is as talented as those other horses. I wanted him to prove that he could overcome some adversity. He did that in the True North. The question now is going to be, how far does he really want to go? And I don't know that we will really find that answer out if the Connections choose to go the path of San Diego to the Forego, because that'll be turning him back to 7/8 of a mile again. What I do know is he deserves to be a short price, and he deserves to be a horse that all of us as handicappers and horse players take seriously for the bigger picture races and the bigger picture instances down the road. Year-end awards as well as Breeders' Cup time, whether it's the Dirt Mile or the Classic or whatever it may be. Because he showed a lot in that True North, and I'm very excited. I could make the argument, as excited I am about Guarana, as excited as I am about the Haskell and this upcoming mare, filly, that we'll discuss running at Monmouth on Saturday. Catalina Cruiser, to me, he is arguably the most important one running, because he could really, to me, he's that kind of horse that he has that natural ability that can win a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic. He just needs to continue to trend that direction, and we'll find out ultimately where he goes. Got to get through Saturday first, but Catalina Cruiser seems like he is back to his best ways. I expect a big effort from him on Saturday. Now we'll wrap things up back out on the East Coast, back at scorching Monmouth Park, for a filly or mare that I didn't expect to see her name in the entries for Saturday's races, but she's running in the Molly Pitcher. Let's talk about Midnight Bisou. To be honest, I didn't anticipate speaking about the older fillies and mares, but then I'm going through, and I'm going to go through and do a preview of the Grade 3 Molly Pitcher with the new Classic PPs over on DRF.com, video.drf.com later on. So I wanted to go through and just get an idea of who was going to run, and I see the first 2 fillies and mares listed, Pacific Wind, and I see Coach Rocks. I say, okay, it's going to be a nice little field. And then all of a sudden, Midnight Bisou shows up, and I go, what the hell is she doing here? She just won the Ogden Phipps in blowout fashion, visually awesome. Not trying to diminish the Molly pitcher or sort of knock it, but it feels like Midnight Bisou's supposed to be running in only grade ones now at this point. The only thought that I have is that perhaps this is nothing more than a means to an end, because on her best day, simply put, she is just 100 lengths the best in a field like this. We're going back to the Ogden Phipps right now. And yes, inside is where you want her to be on Belmont Stakes Day. But she eventually is going to wheel out to the two-path here. She looks like she's ready to be shot out of a cannon. That's exactly what happens. When Mike Smith tells her to go, she blows the doors off this field. And yes, I was guilty of saying, the margin of victory between Midnight Bisou and Escape Clause coming out of the Oaklawn races, you got to take Escape Clause in this spot. Well, that was a dumb opinion, because Midnight Bisou just went out there and waxed the field. Now, again, it depends on how you want to approach this race for her, the Molly pitcher. Are they here for nothing more than a stopgap to get to Saratoga? Probably. It's usually a little bit of an odd thing when you get a horse of this caliber running in a race like this. I'm not suggesting that it means that she's going to lose. She's the most likely winner by a long shot. Maybe I will pick her, maybe I won't pick her. The only other horse that I find mildly intriguing is Electric Forest, just to her outside. Having said that, Electric Forest is just way too slow right now. She needs to up her game by about 10 points, 15 points to have any real chance to run with Midnight Bisou. But it does seem a little bit odd that she's here, unless it really is nothing more than a stopgap, a means to an end, to get her to Saratoga, to get her ready for that showdown with Elate. And then going forward, what does it mean? Well, Midnight Bisou, if she does what she's supposed to do, she is in the driver's seat for the Older Filly and Mare Award for the Eclipses. For the Breeders' Cup, she is already one of, if not the favorites for the Distaff. The difference is that the Distaff's at 1 1/8, and her record at 1 1/8, while she hasn't run at it a ton, is not nearly what her record is at 1 1/16. It's hard to ignore this. 8 for 8. I mean, that is next level stuff there. So I am at a point now where I don't really have much interest in trying to beat her unless there are a ton of other just giant quality horses in there against her. But it is a little bit of a peculiar spot. But then realistically, when you take a step back and you think about it, if we're trying to get her to the next point, probably a little bit of a lengthy layoff going from the Ogden Phipps to that run up at Saratoga, especially if you think Elate is back to her absolute best. So get a little bit of a tightener in here. You probably think she wins, and she doesn't even need to be 90% ready for this thing. Midnight Bisou, fascinating to see her entered here at Monmouth on Saturday. We'll see what we get from her. She's supposed to win. It's horse racing. Anything can happen. But she is, without question, the horse to beat in the Grade 3 Molly pitcher. And she is, without question, one of the best older fillies and mares that we have in training. Hopefully she gets through this and we get that showdown with Elate in a few weeks up at the spot. Important races all across the country this weekend. Monmouth, Saratoga, Del Mar. You're going to have some really high-quality runners that could potentially shape these divisions going forward. 3-year-old males, 3-year-old females, older males, older females. It's going to be fascinating to see what we get from all these horses and all these races on Saturday afternoon. However you've been listening to this thing, thank you for doing so. YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. However you listen, please rate, review, and subscribe. Questions, comments, concerns about any of these horses, any of these divisions, let me know beneath the video player on YouTube or directly to me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. I will be back on Monday with the recap edition. We'll take a look at some of the big races of this weekend, including the Grade One Haskell. We'll see if Maximum Security can get back going, if King for a Day can continue to roll, or if Baffert just lives up to the Baffert expectations down at Monmouth and he wins with mucho gusto. We'll find out. Should be a fun weekend. Good luck this weekend, however you play, whatever you play, and wherever you play. This has been the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show.